Hey, Vlad here, devinside.com. Welcome to another video. In the previous video, we saw all the kinds of ways to load values from our configuration files. And today we're going to see how to read them properly, and also we're going to talk about the HOCON specification. We're also going to talk about the alternative ways to read the values out with a very prominent library called Pureconfig. And also we're going to talk about validation, where we're going to combine Pureconfig with refined. Let's stop talking and get right to it. Now, this is exactly where we left off. I didn't want to change anything because I wanted to have everything on camera. So in fact, we're going to go and in fact, let me actually go to let's remove this .global file. Okay, so let's remove .global.conf. We don't need the lower.conf. Let's go and remove it. Okay, so as agreed in the previous video, we're basically going to stick to the basics. We're going to do config factory load. We're going to do just the first one, just get key one, just have a teeny tiny main like this. We have key one over there. Going to remove all of that stuff like this. Okay, and we're just going to run it without any properties, without anything. We're just going to do this, which doesn't show us anything because I didn't save the main file. There we go, and there we go. Okay, so we have our values.env and application.conf. Now, the HOCON specification, which we talked about in the previous video, is very well documented, so we're actually not going to spend too much time on it. We're going to go real fast through it. In fact, I realized that I covered it actually. I covered the important parts already in the previous video. So we're going to run through it real quick, and then we're going to have fun with Pureconfig and refined, which is going to be way more fun actually. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to Windows, and I already have it open over here, right? So if you scroll down over here, there's this file called HOCON.md, and if we open it in another tab, we're going to see that this is a gigantic specification. Okay, but you basically only need to know two things about this, right? So you don't need to read the entire thing. The first thing is that it seems to be targeting rather not the users, but rather the people who want to implement libraries that actually parse this configuration. And second is, as most documentations on this particular planet, it might contain bugs and details that you actually don't need. We actually don't need any of that. We can actually close this, and we can actually scroll down a little bit over here and go into this one using HOCON, the JSON superset, right? So I was scrolling this thing down during the preparation of this video, and I realized that it's so short we can actually just go in and quickly go through it. Okay, so it's basically a superset of JSON. For example, you can do comments with this thing and this thing. And by the way, in the previous video we installed a plugin which has a syntax highlighting. But even if you don't install the plugin, if you use the regular key binding for introducing comments, which is control and /, then VS Code is going to use this one. In fact, let's go and do this real quick, right? So I go over here, control /, it's doing this one, right? But it would also be happy with this one. Okay, but because control / is doing that, I'm always using this. Okay, let's go back. You can omit the curly braces. You can use the equal sign instead of the colon, and I'm usually using the equal sign. Okay, you don't need to use the equal sign before the curly brace. And in fact, we're going to start scrolling down a little bit in just a second, and we're going to see a bunch of examples. Okay, you don't need commas, so you don't need trailing commas after the last element. No, you actually can have a trailing comma after the last element, which is a fun thing. Starting from Scala 2.12, if you have a multi-line parameter list for anything, you can actually have a trailing comma. All right, you can have unquoted strings, which I don't recommend. Always quote your strings. Better syntax highlighting. No weird surprises. Okay, you can have duplicate keys. The lower values override the values, the previous values. You can have includes. You can have required includes. A bunch of extensions, but basically stick to .conf. You can include files from URLs. You have substitutions. We talked about them. Substitutions can be tricky, actually. You can have concatenations. We saw this briefly. Okay, just make sure that you don't have quotes when you're doing concatenations. So make a quote over here and over here. Make sure that this thing is outside of the quotes. Otherwise, the substitution is not going to work. Substitutions fall back to environment variables if they don't resolve. Yeah, now you see examples. So this is basically JSON. In fact, maybe I should make a video about JSON. I never covered JSON. Right. So this is basically JSON, but you can throw out the big curly braces over here. You can drop the quotes. You don't need them for JSON. You know, all the keys and all the string values, they need to be in quotes. What else? Yeah, you can replace the columns with an equal sign over here. You don't need an equal sign over here. You can remove the commas. You don't need this comma. You can use a dotted notation, right? So you can just say foo.bar, foo.baz, and you can also put them on the same line if you have a comma, okay? Yeah, you can do substitutions, right? So you can use substitutions for something like this, right? So you have a key here, you dereferences with a dollar, similar to environment variables. There's this thing they call inheritance, right? Basically, what they mean is that things are going to get merged. For example, foo is getting merged. C comes over here again, so it's going to override this 5. So at the end, it's going to have this. B and A, they're present only once, so they're just basically both are going to be added. And they're saying basically so you can use this thing for something like inheritance. But actually, you know, it depends on what you're doing, but I don't recommend doing anything so fancy with this. Every time you're doing something fancy, ask yourself, what's going to happen if this library is going to be stopped from being maintained, right? And you're going to end up replacing it with something else, and the something else might not be as fancy, right? So the less fancy you go, the better. Right, so you can have optional variables, right? So basically was this question mark, right? And then this value is going to be disappear, right? So if this key is not present, or if the value is null, I believe, then, you know, basically this line is just going to disappear from the config. You can have arrays, so you can have optional elements, you know, you can add optional elements into arrays, and this is also the reason why you can have a trailing comma. This is the thing that I was talking about, right? This config override with environment variables that you should probably always have. And you know, you should have this config force prefix, and these are the mangling rules, right? So every dot needs to become a single underscore, every dash becomes a double underscore, and every underscore becomes a triple underscore, okay? And here's an example. Right, you can have concatenation, right? So basically, this is what I meant, like, be careful with quotes. So if you have quotes around this whole thing, then it's one string. If you don't, then these two values will be concatenated. What else? You can reference, okay, in this case, it doesn't reference yourself, but you actually can reference yourself sometimes. Well, no, actually it does reference itself, right? So you can have a path over here, and you can actually just append something to the path, okay? Arrays can be concatenated. What else? Again, some example of concatenation over here. But yeah, these are basically the basics. Okay, this is pretty much all that you need to know. We're just gonna go and play around with it for just a couple of minutes. But the focus of this video is going to be on reading the values out, and not on the syntax of HOCON. Okay, let's go back. All right, so have a slightly larger example. So let's go and have a Boolean over here. Let's have key 1, which is true, key 2, which is yes, it will understand that, and key 3 equals key 4 equals false, key 5 equals no, I forgot the 4. Where's the 4? All right, and key 6 is off. And I actually believe that we're not going to play around with environment variables today, so we can close this so that we can have a bit more space. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, these are going to be the Booleans. Now we're going to have a number. We're going to have key 1 equals 1, key 2 equals 1.2. Now we're also going to have a simple key. Right, so we're not going to have an object, simple key, and we're going to have an example of an array. Right, we're going to have a comma over here as well. Okay, and we can go and have something like a string-like. Okay, so we're going to have key 1, hello world. Okay, key 2 equals 1M, and these are the things that get people usually excited, right? So this, in this case, it means 1 megabyte. Key 3 equals 5 milliseconds. Okay, syntax highlighting is kind of weird. I don't know why this is in you know, magenta purple kind of thing, and this one is still green. But in any case, okay, so let's go back to our main and do something like this. Okay, so the first thing that you can do is you can get the entire config for booleans, for example. Okay, let's actually go and do the hyphen W thing. Okay, so now we have gotten, you know, this entire thing. Okay, what you can also do is you can get the boolean, and in fact, let me actually go and duplicate this, have this over here. Okay, in fact, I'm going to copy this like this. Okay, so you can get the config, and then inside of the config you can go and say get boolean, and now you can say, for example, key 1. Okay, and it's going to show you, well, it's true. Okay, so you can do the same thing for 2 and the same thing for 3. Now let me go and paste that thing and also duplicate this line. Okay, so instead of doing this, you can actually go straight to Boolean, right? So instead of this, you can just do get Boolean and you can just say Boolean dot, right? I just named it like this, right? So basically we have seen like the dots basically work exactly the same. Okay, so let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the 6, right? Basically it makes sense, right? So false, no, and off, they're all false. Okay, now let's go and continue with the numbers. Okay, so whatever value you have, you can always choose to read your value as a string, right? So you can do get string, right? So because everything starts as a string, it's like a stem cell. Number key dot 1. Okay, so you can choose to read this number as a string, and it's not there. Where is it? Maybe Bloop didn't notice a change. Yeah, there we go. Just got scared. Okay, you can also go and do get int, right? And you can also go and do get double like this. Okay, kind of cool. You know, it parses a couple of things for you. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go and do get double for key 2, right? Because key 2 is actually already a double. Okay, an interesting thing is that you can also do get int, and this is something weird, right? It's going to go and just cut this stuff out. It just cut out this thing, and we're going to see a solution once we're going to start talking about Pureconfig. Okay, for now let's just continue. There's also a way to just get the number. So in Java there's this thing called Java util, I believe, Java util number. So we can go like this and we can say get number like this, and it's going to be key 1 and it's going to be key 2 like this. Okay, so this is like a Java util number kind of thing. Let's go do here, let's do that, and let's also do here int value, and over here let's do double value. Nobody does that in Scala, but still, let's go take this over here. Okay, let's duplicate this line. So you can do something like get list, but remember this is a library that has been written in Java, so this is a Java list. Okay, so we can do get list, and how did I call it? I called it simple key. Simple key like this. All right, so this is a simple config list, which is some kind of wrapper of list. There's probably something like yeah, unwrapped. Then you get like the Java util whatever array. Doesn't really matter. Nobody does that in the Scala world. We're gonna see better ways of doing that in just a couple of minutes. All right, so we're gonna have that, and then we're gonna continue with the string likes, which are these ones. Okay, so let's duplicate this one, bring it down. Okay, let's do key 1. String like dot key 1. Let's do 2 and let's do 3. Right, so as I already mentioned, right, even though like this is a little bit fancy, you can always read stuff out as a string, not as a list. Typical copy paste mistake. All right, but you can also go and do something fancier, right? So you can do that like that, print it out, bring it down, not print it out, copy. All right, so we can do something like get memory size. And guys, I know that I'm talking too fast, and very often I'm actually getting comments that I'm talking too fast, but these things is basically like a cheat sheet, right? So it's basically we're doing like get string, get boolean. It's all very, very simple stuff. All right, so we have key 2, and we're going to have key 3 over here, and we can do get duration like this. Notice that we're getting the Java duration, right? So it understood that this is just 5 seconds. Well, not 5 seconds, 0.05 seconds, right? So it's 5 milliseconds. Okay. Now this over here, this is 1 megabyte, right? So if we go and divide it by 1024, we should actually get this out. There should be something like value. 2 bytes. There we go, 2 bytes. Okay, so now we have 1024 because 1024 times 1024 is whatever we saw before. This thing. Okay, this is 1 megabyte. You can have kilobytes, gigabytes, and all of that stuff. For timings, you can have also better things. In Scala, we always want the Scala concurrent duration, right? So if we do Scala concurrent duration, like this, then we can print out and we can do a finite duration. Okay, and over here we're going to do config dot get duration. Okay, so it's basically this thing, right? So this is the value. This is the value, and we're going to say that we want it as Java util concurrent time unit milliseconds, like this. All right, so what's the problem? Found Java time duration required long. I forgot to do .2 millis. Right, so if you want, like, it doesn't have to match over here, right? So for example, now it says 5 milliseconds. You can also read it out as seconds, right? 2 seconds, and over here you can do seconds. Okay, it doesn't have 2 seconds. What does it have? It doesn't have 2 seconds, really? All right, interesting. Let's do minutes, whatever, and let's also go do minutes over here. Minutes. There we go. Okay, so well, okay, this is 0 minutes. Let's do something like that. Okay, let's run it. Now we're pretty much done with the basics. However, this is not how you load your properties, your configuration files in proper applications. If you have a proper application, you basically design a hierarchy of case classes that represent your configuration. So let me actually go and we don't even need to throw this stuff. Yeah, let's comment this out for, well, actually, we don't need to comment this out. Okay, so let me go and create a config that is more close to a proper application. So we have db URI, and that's way too much to type. In fact, I'm going to copy the entire thing, not to waste your time, because I want to make this video a bit shorter. Okay, so this is a rather typical configuration. You have your db URI user password, you have Redis, your host, you have your port. Okay, so what you would do is you would go and, let me just throw out all of this stuff. So by the end over here, we're just going to do print line config dot instance like this, and we won't even need this this import, right? So basically, we're going to go and we're going to have a file called config dot scala. Okay, prefer to have my packages like this. All right. So the proper way to do this is basically you're going to have a final case class config. You're going to have a companion object config, and you're going to have stuff inside of the companion object that you're going to use everywhere. So we're going to import this. Okay, so in our case, the config consists of 2 things. It consists of db and Redis. So we're going to have db and Redis over here, right? Redis. Okay, so the types are going to be db, and Redis, like this. And where are they going to be? They're going to be over here. Okay, final case class db, let's do like this for now, and let's do like that for now, Redis, like this. I just wanted to compile. Okay, so we have db and we have Redis. So what does db have? Well, it has the URI, which is a string. It has the user, which is going to be a string. It has the password, which is going to be a string. Let's save it. All right, there we go. So what does Redis have? Well, it has a host, which is a string. It has a port, which is an int, like this. And if we go and look back into our main, we're going to see that all we need to do is config.instance. Okay, so we want to have a config.instance in here, right? So it's going to be a val. Please have it as a val, because the idea behind this config library is that all the values need to be present. So the first thing in your application that you do is config.instance, which needs to be a val or lazy val. But I mean, it actually doesn't matter what it is, as long as you load it as the first thing inside of your application. Okay, have it as a val. Very simple thing, just val. Okay, so inside we're gonna go and import com_typesafe.config. Okay, well, in fact, let's do com_typesafe so that we don't have collisions with other configs over here, because everything is called config in here. Okay, so we're gonna get our reader, which is the same thing as we have been doing all along. So we're gonna do now config.config factory.load, like this. Okay, but now we need to return a config, so we're just going to go and construct the config, right? So this is just the case class that we have over here. Okay, you're going to say db equals db, I'm going to say URI equals reader dot getString dot db dot URI. Okay, comma, duplicate this a couple of times. Okay, so what do we have? We have the user, and we also have the password, which is pw. Okay, comma, and we're going to say Redis equals Redis. Okay, host equals reader dot getString Redis dot host, comma, duplicate the line, and the port is going to be Redis dot port. it's not Redis, it's Redis like this, and the port is actually an integer like this. All right, so what's the problem? Oh, the b small like this. All right, so we're using the entire config. Now it's over here and we can go and print it out. Okay, so just a little bit of code, you know, everything is properly structured, and you're very important, by the way, do not write your application in such a way that this thing is like globally accessible and, you know, every piece in your code base can just access this entire config. Write your application against these classes, right? So something needs a DB, inject a DB. Something needs Redis, inject Redis. Don't just treat this thing as a global object. Okay, let me press enter over here like this. All right, now for this video, I prepared something really fun for you, because one of the things that was added into Scala 2.13 that products and case classes extend products. I have a video about case classes. I made it like long time ago, like 2 years ago. Go check it out if you want. It added a thing to properties which allows you to not only print out the values, but also the name of the key, right? So we have access to DB and we have access to Redis. So I prepared a tiny little abstract class that we will be able to mix into our case classes, which will improve the toString method. And in fact, I don't want to waste your time, so I'm going to go and I'm going to just copy paste it from my script. We're going to go through it real quick, so I'm going to call it NestedRendering. So it's going to do two things. Like it's going to override the toString basically for case classes, technically for product, but basically for case classes. And it's going to do this by using this name property on product, but it also will add nesting, which is really cool. So I'm going to go and create a file called NestedRendering.scala like this, and I'm just going to paste this thing from my prepared script. Okay, we're going to go through it real quick in just a second. So basically, the idea is that we can extend nested rendering and assign a level to our case classes. For example, our config is going to be, right, so it's going to be extends nested rendering, and we're going to say that the level is 1, right? So this is the highest level. Let me actually copy this. Okay, paste it over here. This is going to be level 2. Paste it over here, and this is also going to be level 2. And let's see. And there we go. Look how it's printed out. It basically looks exactly like our config, right? So it says config db URI, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So what you can also do, and we're going to go through it in just a couple of seconds about, you know, how I did it. You can also, so it uses like 2 spaces, but you can also go over here and you can say implicit val, and it's usually not a good thing to use such narrow types for implicit. So I actually have an integer over here. So we're going to do like 8, for example. Okay, so if you have this, then it's going to be indented with 8 spaces. So now let's go and see how I did it. And in fact, I'll probably upload it to a gist somewhere. Let's actually go and create more space. Okay, so the main thing of this is, oh, wrong syntax highlighting, like this, is over here, right? So this product element names thing was added to Scala 2.13, right? So this is the bread and butter of this thing. So basically it zips the names with the values, maps through them key values, right, as the equal sign, right? And the rest is doing like these spaces. In fact, let's not waste any time. Let's not go through this. I'm just going to upload it to some gist, and then you can look at it at your own time. Or, you know, you can pause the video and just look at this, right? But basically, it just assigns a bunch of spaces over here into 2 different levels. Not rocket science. And again, if this was a production application, I would not have this implicit, you know, int, right? I would wrap it into some other type. You know, it's usually not advised to use such low-level types for implicits, as you have seen in my video about implicits, by the way. I'll admit I got carried away a little bit when I was preparing this video. This was super fun to program. All right, let's go back to our config and let's realize that this is a pain to write. This is very, you know, very boilerplatey, especially every time you maintain your config. You have to add it over here, you have to add it over here, and then you have to add it over here, right? So these 3 places, very error prone, very annoying. Now we're going to use Pureconfig to solve exactly this issue, right? So what it can do is basically it can generate all this stuff for you, right? It's based on shapeless, I believe, and you know, it uses macros and all of that stuff. Okay, so basically you can replace the types of config library with Pureconfig. I'm saying replace, but you know, Pureconfig has a dependency on the type-safe config. But still, so if you go into our build, we can actually throw this one out because, again, it will have a dependency. If this was a production application, I would not throw this out because you want to be very specific about your versions. In fact, I'm going to leave it. No, I'm not going to leave it because I want to show you that you can actually replace it. Okay, so I'm going to do com.github.pureconfig config like this, and this is a Scala library. So we're going to do Pureconfig. Okay, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do 0.12.2. Okay, yes, please import the changes. Right. So after it's going to import the changes, we'll see that everything is still going to work because again, this Pureconfig library, it has a dependency on types of config. So if we don't change anything, everything still will work exactly the same as it worked before. Okay, let's actually minimize this just a little bit. All right, let's go back into a terminal. It should be done in just a couple of seconds. I'm going to cut it out from the video. All right, it seems like it finally loaded. Let's see. Yeah, okay, so everything works exactly the same. We didn't have to change anything, but now we can pretty much throw this thing out, this entire thing, okay, and we can replace it with config source from config, and Pureconfig comes with its own loading mechanisms, right? So you can do like from string, from file, and all that stuff, but also you can just load it from the config that you already have, right? So basically from this reader over here, right? So you can just do reader, and now instead of like doing all of that stuff, you can just say load or throw, and please load this entire thing into config, right? Please load this entire thing into this, okay? But this will need a couple of imports. Actually, only one. Well, technically two. Okay, so we can go over here and we can say import pureconfig dot underscore and import pureconfig dot generic dot auto. Okay, like this. This is all we need, and the entire thing is going to behave exactly the same as before. All the values are exactly the same. In fact, now there is no need to have this extra val over here, right? So we can just actually do that, and we probably also don't need this anymore. So we can just do this like that. All right, so yeah, this entire thing just turned into that, right? Just these couple of lines, and it's going to load your entire config. It's going to behave exactly the same as before. Pureconfig is really awesome. Note that the way it works, it doesn't actually care about your types. It cares about the names of your fields. It's similar to Chimney. Okay, so for example, if we go and do like whatever here, and do whatever here. Okay, it's still going to load the values because all it cares about is this field over here, db. Okay, so see, it loaded exactly the same stuff. Let's go and revert this real quick like this. Now, I don't want to make this video a Pureconfig tutorial, but I want to show you a couple of important things. So for example, over here, usually by default, you would use dashes in your keys if they get too long. So for example, you would do something like my user, and actually let me show you some substitution. Okay, so if you have a substitution, you can't just do URI. You need to be very specific, and you need to say db.uri. Okay, but in this case, we're doing user. Okay, so db user, and most of the times people go and use camel case over here. So they do my password like this, db.pw. So what I'm showing you is that by default, this is going to work. This one is not. Okay, so by default, it will convert this, I believe this is called a kebab case. I'm not actually sure about this, but I believe this is called a kebab case. So it will turn the kebab case into camel case, right? So over here, you can go and can say my user string like this, and it's going to work. However, it will not know what to do with the camel case. Okay, so if you go over here and you can do my PW, okay, like this, which is a string, it's going to explode. It's not going to be able to convert this one into this one. Okay, it says key not found my PW. You might have a misconfigured product hint, and this is exactly what we're going to do next. So what we can do is we can go and first of all, we're going to go and use camel case everywhere. Right, so we're going to do this. Right, this is for example that other libraries are doing. Right, so if you go into ScalaFMT.com, this is exactly what they're doing. And I highly recommend you to do this because then you can just literally copy paste stuff from your config. Right, copy paste into these case classes. Okay, so basically all you need to do is you need to duplicate this import generic. Okay, and you just need to do implicit def product hint for some type A. It's going to be a product hint for some type A, and it's going to be a product hint config field mapping. And I'm going to say camel case, camel case, like this, right? This one tiny thing. Let me actually create more space over here, and now all of a sudden it loaded your values just fine. In fact, let me throw them out. We don't need them. We don't need them anymore. Like this. Okay, but now it loaded your values just fine, right? So it basically maps camel case to camel case, right? Just have this thing, all done. Now, the cool thing about Pureconfig is that it manages to map these things to even better types than the type safe config, right? So for example, over here, if you're going to go and say something like timeout equals 0.5 seconds, let's duplicate that. Let's bring it down over here. Let's say 2 seconds, for example, like this. Now we can go and import, for example, java.net. And Pureconfig is a Scala library, so it understands Scala types, Scala.concurrent.duration over here, right? So, for example, we can go and say that our URI is actually going to be URI, okay? And our user is going to be string, the password is going to be a string. Let's go to Redis. So our host is again going to be a URI, okay? But we can also have the timeout, right? So we can have the timeout, which is duration. Come on, duration. Okay, and over here, same timeout duration, okay, like this, and it's going to read out these values just fine. And there we go, right? So it worked with the URI, it worked with the duration, it understood that this is 500 milliseconds and that this is 2 seconds. You know, everything is, you know, very beautiful. And we can actually go even further, and we can add some validation with a library called Refine. So Refine has an integration with Pureconfig. So let's go and add it. Let's go and edit, build, and comma, and we're going to do eu.template, right? We talked about refined a couple of videos ago. Go and check it out. Refined Pureconfig, and we're going to do 0.9.12. like this. Yes, please import the changes. So let's go back to our config. Okay, so we're going to go and we're going to say, please import all the types from template timepit.refined.types.all. Right. So what refined is doing, it adds predicates to your or the existing types, and so it narrows them down, right? So it refines them. You know, watch my video about refine. Okay, so for example, we can go and say, you know, as a user, you know, I want to have a non-empty string over here, and over here as well, non-empty string. Sounds useful, right? And over here, for example, we want to have a user port number, right? Let's go and save that. Why does it take forever to import? 47 seconds, 1 minute. Come on. In fact, in the meantime, we could actually go and help it out over here a little bit. Okay, so we have the pureconfig generic auto, but we also need import eu.template.refined.pureconfig underscore. Okay, something failed. What's the reason? Output partially failed. Oh, the G is missing. Jesus. Config like this. This is why it was taking forever. No worries, I'm going to cut it out from the video like this. All right, so it finished the importing. Let's go through the code again real quick. So we're importing all the types. We're using non-empty string for user and password. We're using the user port number for the inside of the integer, and we added this one import. This is basically the integration so that it knows how to load them, and it loaded them just fine. However, if we go and do something like an empty string for the user, okay, and some port like 800, for example, then it should fail. There we go. It should fail, and it should fail with descriptive messages. So yeah, so we have two failures at DB user and at Redis port. So DB user is empty, the predicate is empty, did not fail, which I find a confusing message, but still. And the left predicate over here failed, right? So 800 was less than 1024. The proper user ports, they need to be somewhere between 1024 and 49,151. Awesome. Okay, let's go and revert that like this. Let's go and run it again. Great. And now that we have refined, we can actually go to our nested rendering and we can improve it a little bit. We can say that our ints should only be positive ints. Okay, and for this we need a couple of imports. We need to import eu.template.refined. Oh, come on, give it to me. My laptop is slowing down for some reason. It's a really warm day today. I believe it's slowly dying. All right, template.refined types numeric, right? So this is the one that we need. We might need another import in the config where we are assigning the values, but maybe not. All right, so now it takes forever to compile. It doesn't take forever to compile because we're using macros all of a sudden. For some reason, my laptop is just slowing down completely. I have no idea why. Problem over there, type mismatch, found end, blah, blah, blah. That's exactly what I meant. We probably need another import over here, somewhere over here. Let's actually clone this one and do something like auto over here, like this. This should be actually enough. Not types auto. Oh my god. Like this. Sure. I don't know. I don't think that this is going to solve the issue, but for some reason my laptop is just like completely dying. All right, now it seems like it's fine, and also it's faster a little bit. Not sure. Yeah, I think it's fine now. So another cool thing is the integration with a library called Squants, and Squants is the Scala API for quantities. Let's actually go ahead and edit real quick. So let's do com.github.pureconfig, right? And we're gonna have this, and we're gonna have pureconfig squants, right? And the version is going to be the same as the 0.12.2 above. Okay, I like to, whoops, that's not what I wanted. I prefer to sort my lines like this, comma over here, save that. Yes, please import the changes. All right, so yeah, so you can have like really crazy quantities. For example, you can go into the application conf and we can add something like length equals 42.195. This is straight from the README, right? And you can do something like kilometers. Okay. You can also do something like temperature. And I chose temperature on purpose because I wanted to show you how to type in, this circle degree symbol. So apparently on Unix system, you do Control-Shift-U, and then it switches into this weird insert mode. So you'll let everything go. Then you type in B0. I wasn't sure that it would look like this. Okay, and then you press Enter. So I did something wrong because I think something grabbed my my input. Okay, so let's do this again. Control-Shift-U, B0. See, again, something jumped around, and I think it grabbed my input. Hold on, Control-Shift-U, B0. Okay, I'm gonna have a lower 0. Enter. Okay, there we go. Control-Shift-U, B0, Enter. Okay, and you have your degree symbol. Okay, so we're gonna do something like this. Let's go back into my terminal, which is still dying here. Okay, there we go. Let's do that. Let's go back into my config, and we're going to import a couple more things. We're going to import squants dot space like this, and also let's import squants dot terminal, not terminal, thermal like this. Okay, so now we can go and edit them just to the config. Okay, so it's over here. So let's do length, which is length, and let's do temperature, which is temperature like this. And we need to go to the bottom, and we need to add yet another import, which is going to be import a pureconfig.module squants. Right. So one import is for the types, and the other import is, to get the instance of the reader to actually parse them. Okay. So now it's going to be able to read out the length and the temperature for you in just a couple of seconds. There we go. Okay, it worked. Great. I actually got kind of curious when I was reading this out. When I was preparing for this video, and I wanted to know how to actually construct a value like this from your regular Scala program. So you can do this thermal dot temperature conversions. I believe my laptop sped up again. I don't know why it came down. So 56, that's 7.c. Okay, this is how you can do it. Yeah, I feel it. It's faster again. I already see. All right, and there we go. 56.7%. Not percent. Temperature, the degrees Celsius. All right, let's remove this again, like this. Let's not forget that we also have access to system properties. So for example, we can go into config. Let's actually create a bit more space over here. So we're inside of object config, and we can go and we can do final case class. Now we're going to have a name collision. So I want to get out the value of this config.override with env vars thing. Okay, so we have a name config, but again, pureconfig doesn't care about the names of your types. It only cares about the names of your fields. So you can call it however you want. I'm going to call it also config. Okay, and it's going to have this override with env vars, which is a boolean, but we're going to have fun with refined. We want to make sure that it's always true. So we can do something like refined equal true, which is a singleton-based literal type. Watch my video about refined if this freaks you out. Okay, so this is also at level 2. Okay, so it's also at level 2. And I don't want it to print out also config. I want it to print out config. So I'm going to do override val product prefix, which is a string. And I'm just going to say config like this. So we need a couple of more imports. So we already have auto, we have all. We also need generic. So we need generic for equal for this one, and we also need the API for refined. Okay, like this. There we go. F9. Ta-da-da. All right, it looks like it's fine. It's where is it? We got DB. Oh, we forgot to add it. Let's have it as a first one. Let's say config, also config, like this. All right, let's see, and there we go. Config override with env vars is true. Let's also not forget that we are able to read the environment variables, right? So for example, we can do env, no, I think it's called key1, which is a string. While it compiles, let me actually open it and see it. .env, yes, we still have the key1 in there, so it should be able to read out this key for us. And there we go, key1, value 1 from .env. All right, now we're pretty much done with the video. I want to leave you with a couple of words of caution. These tools are very, very powerful, and some of their behaviors are, you know, they're not really bugs, but they might be really, really surprising. I'm going to show you one of them. So for example, let's say that the only value that we're loading is the config. Okay, so let's just do all of that. Just comment it out, goes away. Please just load the config. Now, if you go down and we switch the loading from the default behavior, right, which is this one, okay, if instead we just say something like string, okay, please load it from string, right, and we do config dot override with env vars equals true, okay, so now it's going to run, it's going to parse only that. But we basically switched off the entire, you know, loading hierarchy, right? So the entire resolution of these values, we totally switched it off. Which means that if we go and do something like, yeah, let's do, no, not this one. Yeah, let's do this one. Okay, let me remove that like this. Okay, so let's run it with false. Okay, so while it's running, I'm also going to go to main, and I'm going to show you the problem. So the problem is that now your config variables diverge from the system properties, right? So remember, we just passed it in. So which means that if we go and do system.get property, which is this one, override with env vars, right? And it could be any property, right? This is just an example, right? So basically, when the config loads your property now, it's going to be true. But when, you know, but the actual system property is actually false. So you just need to make sure that your entire team is aware that the only way to read stuff out is through this config, right? Very easy to do wrong. Now, I don't want to leave you on this sad note, so to say. I want to show you that it is also possible with Pureconfig to do something really cool. So Pureconfig can actually generate the config for you from the values, right? So basically, if you construct an instance of config manually, right? So this whole thing, it doesn't work for environment variables, by the way. So if we remove the environment variables, okay? So if you were to go to your main method, for example, and if you were to construct this entire object manually, right, you would be able to what's the problem? There's no comma here. So you would be able to write it out back to JSON, basically. And the way you do this is, I'm kind of lazy to construct this entire thing. So what I'm going to do is, whenever we read it from the file, from this file, we're also going to write it back, right? So I'm going to go and I'm going to say that this doesn't return instances, this return multiple instances, right? So it returns config, and it also returns the typesafe config dot config value, like this. Okay, so basically this is going to be our read, okay, and we're also going to have our write, and in the end we're just going to return the tuple with the read and the write. Before we implement this, let's go back to our main, and let's do val deconstruct the tuple read and write from config.instances, okay, and let's go and print out the read and print out one of these, and let's go and print out the write.render, right, which is going to be basically JSON. Okay, so let's now go over here, and this write is basically just going to be a config writer of config and just to read. Okay, so usually over here you would construct this object manually, but I don't want to go and waste your time in creating this object manually, right? Because like this is already the object, right? So this is already the config, and you can go and render it back to JSON. Let's create some more space. Can I convert false to refine? What? Oh, are we passing the false thing? Okay, hold on. Like this. There we go. All right, so now at the top we have this thing, right? And if we did this manually, we would be able to go back to JSON like this. And for some reason, it doesn't work for environment variables, right? So if I go back and I have this key over here, for some reason it doesn't like that, right? So let's go and run it again. It's not gonna like it. Oh, it did. It worked. When I was practicing with this, it didn't work. All right, it worked. Great. Maybe I was doing something wrong in the preparation for this video. Cool. All right. Now, as always, please remember that I cannot cover every little detail of every library. It's very important that you go and play on your own. With the type-safe config, was refined, with Pureconfig, with Squants. In fact, I might make a video about Squants, but maybe not actually, because it has a very good, well-done documentation. So it's actually pretty straightforward. As a word of advice, don't be complacent when it comes to dealing with configuration. Some really, really dangerous things could happen if this goes wrong. So write your unit test, load the defaults. Don't do anything crazy with substitutions. Yeah, just behave. For now, I hope you enjoyed these couple of videos. As always, it's been Vlad, devinside.com. Don't forget to like this video if you did, subscribe if you want to improve the developer inside you, and if you learned something today, consider supporting me on Patreon, and most importantly, take care.